Ron Clements and I, my writing partner, we certainly collaborate with each other. You know, we've written many of the scripts together, and people say, how can you write a script together? And Ron is more structure, and I'm sort of more dialogue and business. So we agree on an outline of these stories. We didn't actually write the script, and this is the first one we didn't write, but we wanted to get an indigenous writer, and there's a whole list of reasons why we didn't write this one. But on Little Mermaid and Aladdin and all that, we wrote the first drafts of all those, and we would sort of agree together on an outline of the story. And then I would go and kind of improvise on paper. I would sort of write the same scene 10 different times, 12 different times, and just improvising, you know, trying different ideas. And then Ron would be taking those pages, and he would read what I'd written, and he'd like some of it, and he'd use parts of it, and some things, even though I wrote 10 versions, he wouldn't read any of them that he liked, and he'd write it completely fresh. But he didn't want me to stop him and he'd look at stuff while he was writing. So over the course of 8 weeks, I'd be feeding him pages, and I wouldn't be seeing anything. He would only, if he was going to change something that affected the storyline, then we'd have a discussion. But if the plot still held true and all that, I just kept going, and I fed him. So I would write a stack that big to get a script that big. And so then at the end, I would read the script, and it would be kind of fresh to me. And he'd hand me a finished script, having edited it and put it all together and added his own things. And I would read it at that point, and I would say, well, why didn't you use my version of this scene? And he'd be like, that is your version. And I wrote it so many times I didn't remember, but certainly there were scenes where he wrote entirely. So we would collaborate that way, but our style of directing was, there's a system at Disney called plussing an idea, where you're not supposed to just execute an idea, you're supposed to plus it. You're supposed to bring something of yourself, invest something of yourself, and elevate it, make it better. And we like that idea. We always heard about that from the 9 Old Men and the classic Disney films, that they were built on a system of plussing. So when we would have screenings of the movie, we would encourage people to send their notes. And we would always have, in the John Lasseter era, we always do brain trust, story trust meetings after the movie, where we screen it internally only. And we would encourage everybody in the audience to send notes, but there would be a smaller group of 20, 30 people, small, but that would give notes at the end of the movie. And John would lead off, Lasseter, I like this, I don't like that. And he would open it up to the floor, and people would say, I'm confused by this, or wouldn't it be better if you did that? And so there was a lot of churn on the movie of, you know, people not thinking this worked or that worked, or there were times where Maui was superseding Moana, and it was more his story than hers. And they're like, we used to have a climax in the movie where she was going to plant the heart of Te Fiti, and she had to go, the island was dying, and the island was falling apart, and it was sinking, and she had to go undersea to do this whole thing, and she got trapped. The island sort of was corrupt enough that she was trapped under there. And in that version of the story, Maui, the story about him lifting up islands was a myth. He was like, don't believe everything you read. I've never lifted up an island. Who could do that? And so in that version of the story, he, in order to save Moana, sucked it up and basically used his hook and raised an island for the first time in order to save her. And she was sort of buried on that island. And because he had, you know, kind of come to love her over the course of the story. But certainly many of the women on the movie said, no, you're giving Maui the climax of the movie. That's not her. You've kind of gotten it messed up. And it was hard to get through our heads. Yeah, well, but she's the one that made him do this, so isn't, they're like, no, you've got to have her at the center. So that got all reworked, so, and really up until the last minute. And we had, you know, Pam Rimmen was a writer, and I was not sure our producer, and Maggie Malone, Jessica Julius were in development. It wasn't only women that were keeping her at the center. There were people, male figures as well on our story team. But it was an effort, ongoing effort, to not let it slip back and to keep her driving the story